of La Penta. This is WICR.
Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the Sports Vault. I am your host with the most, Jersey Joe Archino. And if you like jaw-dropping plays, you and I are going to be good friends because last night, Stephen Curry and James Harden certainly provided just a multitude. I mean, really was just jaw-dropping moment after jaw-dropping moment from each individual. Harden with 38 points, 10 rebounds, 9 assists, 3 steals. I really thought it was James Harden's best playoff performance that I've ever seen from him because leading up to this season, really the knock on Harden was he wasn't a great postseason player. I mean, I don't think he ever really did anything jaw-dropping before this season. Clearly, in his final days with the Oklahoma City Thunder in that NBA Finals, he was just not good, and he was not good enough to help his team win. But I think that performance last night was one of the best I've seen, and he's such a pesky player. I mean, he's so frustrating to try to defend, and especially for a team like the Warriors who's so good defensively. Any team, he's so difficult to defend with the way that he plays, the shots that he makes. I mean, how aggressive he is. I think he's extremely difficult to officiate, and he's even more difficult to try to defend. And clearly last night he had a good game. Now on the final possession, he loses the ball, and I think when we look at that final possession, for me, that is what sums up these two teams. I think they're both very even. They both like to shoot a lot of threes. They both like to play with a tempo on offense. They're both fast and young, and they have depth. But I think the thing that separates the two is defense. I've thought that since the beginning of the series, the thing that was going to give the Warriors and put them over the top here was because they can put it into a gear on defense that Houston just can't. Houston is not that good defensively. They haven't been all year. You look at the core of the guys this team is built on, even in Harden, and this just isn't a team whose identity and priority is on the defensive end. And you saw that in the final possession. The better defensive team has won these first two games. The better defensive team will win the series, and that's the Golden State Warriors. Now, when you look at this game as a whole, I thought the Warriors were going to give them a death punch early. I really did. I mean, you looked at the way things were going in that second quarter with about 8 minutes around that mark, and Golden State was about a couple plays away from really stomping on Houston's throat, and it was going to be over. And I really started to question the effort at points with Houston during that stretch because Golden State was just getting it so easy inside that it was just almost laughable. But Houston, you give them a lot of credit because for them to come back the way that they did, I mean, they really went on a tremendous scoring run against the Warriors. I mean, they just outscored them tremendously. They tied up the game 55-55 at the half, and then look, it was a struggle for Golden State, but Steph Curry comes back, and Steph Curry, like James Harden, a jaw-dropping performance from him as well. 33 points, 3 rebounds, 6 assists. I mean, he was just hitting shots that only Stephen Curry can make. Just guys in his face. I mean, the last 3 he hit at the end of the game, Terrence Jones defended that so well. I mean, really, Stephen Curry, that's just a shot that he makes. That's the reason why he's the MVP of the league, and he certainly reminded us why he's that MVP in his first 2 games. But you look at the fourth quarter of the last 2 games. These are close games. These are close teams. But in that home stretch, who plays the better defense? That's the Golden State Warriors. Now, the Golden State Warriors, the turnovers were a major problem last night. Both teams definitely not very good in the turnover department. I think you look at collectively 10 turnovers for the Rockets, and I think the Warriors, the 16. It was 15, and then I guess they had another one in the fourth at the end. Just not good enough. I mean, a lot of bad momentum breakers because of the turnovers. That has been a problem with Golden State. But look, at the end of the day, it's been their defense that has carried them home. It really is, and that's the deciding factor in this series. Now, obviously, Houston showed in their last round against the Clippers that they have the ability to come back. And I said I didn't think they would come back in the last series, but I think this is a different beast because Golden State, when things start going for them, when the threes start falling, when their defense is where it should be, they're extraordinarily difficult to beat because they have the depth. I don't have the same questions about their mental toughness as I did with the Clippers. With the Clippers, whenever things started going against them, they were not a very tough mental team. I don't think Chris Paul is. I don't think a lot of those guys are very tough mentally. And I don't get that same question marks with the Warriors. The Warriors, I look at this group, I look at Stephen Curry, I look at Steve Kerr, I look at Klay Thompson, and I see the mental toughness. I think when you look at them the way that they play, it's all about collective effort, being collectively sound, sharing the basketball. I think that's something that Golden State thrives in. Their identity is based upon is unselfishness. Draymond Green, Harrison Barnes, this is a group that is very unselfish, and I think that's why their toughness never wavers. And they have got, I love having a guy like Draymond Green who just really sets that physical edge. He's not going to take any trash from people. He's going to throw elbows. He's going to be tough. He's going to force you to do what he wants you to do. And I think you need guys like that on your team, and especially when you've got as close of a group as this one. And for all intents and purposes, that's what we know is how close this Warriors team is. I think that's really important. And look, Houston's frustrated. You could see it in Kevin McHale when you watch his press conference. You saw Harden at the end of the game walking back to the tunnel, kind of smack the silver lining entrance down. And the frustration is building, and I think it has to be at this point because they're both so evenly matched. But the one thing that they're not evenly matched in is defense. And you've seen the first two games down the home stretch who the better defensive team is. I don't think there's been any questions who the better defensive team is. And the better defensive team is winning the series. The better defensive team is going to win this and go to the NBA Finals. And right now, that is the Golden State Warriors. And look, it's been incredible to watch. I thought some of the second round matchups we had could have left a little bit more to be desired. I don't think that we've gotten that so far with this Golden State series. I mean, both games have been phenomenal. They've been close. They've come down to the wire, and it's been that defense. And look, the stars have certainly came to play. Curry and Harden, jaw-dropping good. But at the end of the day, I've said it all along, it's going to be the better defensive team who wins. And right now, that is proved ultimately correct. The Golden State Warriors, I think, will move on now. I think the Rockets win a game, but I think that Golden State, they move on 4-1 in this series. Now you go on to the next one, Cleveland and Atlanta. Cleveland taking a very important game one. And I think if you look at it and you try to make the deciding factor of why this is such an impressive win for Cleveland, I think it's because Kyrie Irving really gave you nothing. And I was listening to Colin Cowherd a lot yesterday, and that was kind of the point he tried to homer in on, is how Kyrie really gave them nothing and how they were still able to win that game. And let's be honest, win it pretty decisively. I think the first half of that game, the Cleveland couldn't really play at the pace that they wanted to. I think they wanted to play much faster. They really couldn't. They were denied that by the Hawks. The Hawks did a good job. They gave them problems. They didn't let them play at the pace that they wanted to. But in the second half, once J.R. Smith starts hitting all those shots, the guy couldn't miss. I mean, he was unbelievable. 28 points, 8 rebounds, 3 assists, a steal and a block. Very active from all over the place. The guy was just tremendous. I mean, you look at his numbers. Basically, when he started shooting, I expected it was going to go in. That's just how good he was in that game. I mean, 10 of 16 from the three-point line. 8 of 12 from the three-point made. So still terrific. And that's what LeBron has kind of had. I mean, when you look at the playoff runs he's had the last couple years, there's always been that one hot shooter who just can't miss. Whether it's been Shane Battier or it's been Mike Miller, he's had that guy who he could rely on, who's got that hot hand. Right now it's J.R. Smith. And it couldn't come at a better time, because that's the one thing that really worries me still about Cleveland is it is a dynamic duo. Kyrie is as important as LeBron is to this team, but he just doesn't have it right now. I think he re-aggravated the knee injury. He is planning to play in Game 2 and to start, but you could just see the explosiveness is not there. He's not the same player that we've been watching and seeing dominate the league all year. He's just not right, and that is the thing that worries you. But then at the same time, to win this game as decisively as they did without that effort, and I'm not going to say effort. Effort is the wrong word. Without the explosiveness and the health of Kyrie, that is the thing that really it makes you impressed from Cleveland's side. And look, DeMarre Carroll, apparently there's no structural damage to that knee, but I still don't think that you could count on him to be 100%. And he's very, very important to this Hawks team, because the Hawks, more than anyone, rely on the collective effort. They need everyone to really be in that full gear. I mean, Teague, Horford, Millsap, it is a collective group. There isn't one outlier here who's the definable star like Cleveland has with LeBron. So they account for everybody, and they use everybody. Without DeMarre Carroll at full strength, that is huge. That is a huge thing that helps rebalance the scale in Cleveland's favor, because without a healthy Kyrie, I still think that it's more of just LeBron's magic than anything that's going to carry them to the NBA Finals. But I think right now, depending on what his health status is, that is huge. And I think you give Cleveland a lot of credit, because I think once they start to open up leads against the Hawks and they start to build that lead, then they get to play at the pace that they want to. The Hawks can't handle that pace. They can't. Look, the Hawks do a lot of good things well. They are tremendous defensively, and they're a very good collective basketball team, sharing the basketball, being unselfish. But once Cleveland plays at that pace and they really put the effort in on defense, you saw early in that game Cleveland didn't get off to a good start. David Blatt in the timeout was just saying, look, we're not playing playoff basketball. We're giving them everything way too easy, and that was absolutely correct. Once they put the gear in on defense, they played that the way that they had to on defense. Cleveland was absolutely fine in this game. Again, it's all about, I think in both these series, there's two definable things that really show you why Golden State's the team who's going to get to the finals and why Cleveland is the team that's going to get to the finals. I think it's Cleveland's tempo. It's just too quick for the Hawks. They're just too good offensively for the Hawks when they start to get into their gear. And I think Golden State, it's all defense, like I said before. But it's all going to be very important to see how does Kyrie look in this next game, because if you're a Cleveland fan and you're a Cleveland player on that team, I think you just need him to do something and just show some explosiveness to give you some ability of just feeling right about him again. Because, I mean, you look at the game that he had, and it's absolutely true. He really didn't give you that much, and that's got to worry you, because if he's not explosive and he's not showing that same sign of activity that he has, that's really got to be concerning to you. And I think at the end of the day, Cleveland will still win this series, especially with Carroll. I think Carroll and Kyrie are the two guys that you're going to be looking at the most tonight. What's going to happen with Carroll? I haven't gotten any updates yet. It's certainly, if that does come out during the show, I'll break it down. But I don't think right now, it seems like he is able to play. Again, nobody knows. It didn't look very good. They say no structural damage, but we will see. And Kyrie apparently re-aggravated his knee injury, but again, at the same time, he was expected to play. So it's an interesting situation right now, because you would have to say, after watching the first game, based on everything that's happened with Cleveland and how terrific LeBron was in that game and how everything else shaped up and with how J.R. Smith played, I don't think Cleveland certainly doesn't have as much depth right now as the Hawks do. But they have the best player in the world, and clearly that shows. And right now, if they have a guy who has the hot hand shooting the basketball and they can rely on J.R. Smith, which I think you can based on how well he's played this year, I do think that they get by in this series. Now, it's not going to be difficult. It's going to be difficult. I thought all along it would be difficult, but I just think LeBron right now is just, he's LeBron, and there's nothing you could do to stop him. It's really that simple. There's nothing you could do to stop LeBron James. It's not going to happen. When he's hitting his shots from the field, you can't stop him. When he drives to the basket, you can't stop him. And he elevates his teammates more than any other player, maybe in NBA history. And right now, that is coming into play. And you can't stress it more than right now, because right now, Cleveland, without a healthy Kyrie, needs everyone's effort more than any other point in this season. They don't have Kevin Love. J.R. Smith is stepping up. Iman Shumpert has played very well. I think at the end of the day, it's going to be important. And it just, one little stretch in this game, one little stretch in game one was the deciding factor. Once J.R. Smith started hitting those shots, Cleveland builds the lead. Now the Hawks make a little run at the end and make it interesting, but they had enough of a cushion to be able to ride out the win. That's all they need. They get that one stretch where they can start playing at that tempo and they wreak havoc. It's too much for the Hawks. It just is. The Cavs just have the supremely talented superstar, and he's not going to let that game get away from them. I think it's one stretch for the Cavs. They find that one stretch where they can impose their will and they can set their tone and their tempo. I think that's the deciding factor. Now, what happens in game two, I really don't have a deciding factor right now that I think who's going to win. I think clearly this series is very interesting. It's difficult to make the call right now because Kyrie, without his explosiveness, very difficult to call, and with DeMarre Carroll still his status being in the air, it's tough to call. I have, part of me thinks, you would think that the Atlanta Hawks are going to bounce back on their home floor, but at the same time, I really believe that Cleveland has that confidence. Winning that game one is so big, and more than anything, it's the way that they won it. I don't think that when you look at all the numbers for Cleveland, they're not jaw-dropping, and I just think they know that if they get one stretch where they're able to dominate and impose their will, they're the team that's going to win, because when they play their best defense, when they're able to impose their will, I just think they know it. They're the better team. They have the best player in the world, and that's all the confidence you need right there. Part of me there wants to go with Cleveland, and if I did have to make the pick, which I'm on the air right now, so I probably should, I'll go with the Cleveland Cavaliers to get it done. I think they find one stretch where they're able to find their tempo, push their pace, and at the end of the day, I just think it's too much for the Hawks to handle. But that is a lot of NBA talk, almost 18 straight minutes of NBA talk. But guess what? There's more NBA talk on the way. Don't go anywhere. I'll be right back.